Friendship was the true treasure all along, but not cringe. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to be taking a fully spoilery look at the Kaiju number 8 anime, episode 3. I forgot to check and see what the title was, but let's get into it. I took away kind of 2 points from this episode. One of them is purely technical about the pacing, and we'll get into that. The other one really kind of strikes home at what the main point of Kaiju number 8 is, why it is shaping up to be not just a good, but a great story. So in the first part, the spoiler-free section, I'll go over point 1, because there are no spoilers in it. Then I'll get into point 2 for the spoiler section. The first one is pacing. I think that the first 3 episodes of Kaiju number 8 are a really great study in pacing. Not because it does anything unusual, which it doesn't, but because it kind of really illustrates the 3 ways that they can convert chapter manga stories into episodic anime series. You all know the classic trope of the anime starting too soon and rushing to overtake the manga, because it takes longer to make a chapter of manga than it does an episode of anime. Anime, because of how long you're expected to read a chapter of manga, and because of how long it takes to watch an episode of anime, the anime advances much faster than the manga, and there are various tricks like staggering the anime seasons, and Shonen Jump almost always waits until they've got at least 100 chapters of the manga out before releasing the anime. But you can't avoid the fact that you have to alter the pacing of the story in order to switch from manga to anime. Now, there are very rare exceptions. For instance, the first chapter of the Kaiju number 8 manga fit perfectly into a standard length anime episode. I was actually really surprised by this in episode 1. Episode 1 started at the beginning of the manga and ended at the end of the chapter. But if you look back, you will notice that chapter 1 of the manga was 50 or 60 pages, 2 to 3 times the length of a standard chapter. That's why it fits so seamlessly into the anime. Now, most first and last chapters are much longer in a manga, but I don't doubt that Matsumoto was thinking that he wanted to pace that first chapter perfectly to be one episode of an anime. Then you have chapter 2, or rather episode 2, which took multiple chapters, multiple story arcs, and mooshed them together. You have the story arc of Kafka battling the kaiju, the story arc of the initial steps of the application process, the 3-month gap. It's multiple chapters mooshed into one. So there we have the illustration of 2 very different ways. One, you have a single story arc that fits perfectly, and you can have essentially a beat-by-beat recreation. The only things that were different were the scene with Kafka jumping through the glass and the introduction scene. We get a bit different angle than we did in the manga. Then for episode 2, we have multiple chapters compacted into one episode because that is simply where the story fit. Now we have the third example, where you pad out the runtime of the episode. Now this can get dangerous because when you pad out the runtime of an episode, it can get boring. You can only pan over screenshots of beautiful mountain ranges so often before your audience loses attention. So, in episode 3, what they did, there was some interesting things where they switched around perspective of who asks what questions, minor things like that. But there was one specific scene that anybody who read the manga will notice has been significantly extended. I think there was another one that stuck out to me too, but I forget what it is at the moment. Now, this is no huge revelation, but if you are watching the anime and you have read the manga, if you have any interest in animation or writing comics, I think this is going to be a classic textbook illustration of the 3 main ways to skillfully and in such a way that will produce a good end result, convert a manga into an anime. That being said, I'm about to get all up in the spoilers, so to give you a chance to not hear any spoilers, I'm going to tell you to click the links below the video to get yourself a copy of my book, Flying Sparks, Dragons, Aliens, and Things That Go Boom in the Night. Alright, on to the spoilers. In this chapter, our plucky Defense Force recruits line up to test themselves against the Kaiju and Kaiju slaying. Now, I don't want to get too into the manga, but the manga has recently, in my mind, chapter 106 really clarified the main theme of this series, which is going to be of no surprise to anyone, because this is what kaiju stories have been from the beginning. Since Godzilla first stomped out of the ocean as a representation of nuclear powers and nuclear disaster in the 1950s, the kaiju genre has manifested the collective fears of the civilization. Not necessarily of the individual, but what the individuals in the civilizations were afraid of, specifically as it related as a threat to their civilization. At the time when Godzilla first crawled out of the ocean, what was the fear of the Japanese people? Nuclear weaponry. Not necessarily that they would be directly attacked, but they were kind of stuck between the US and Russia, and then the US and China, and then the US and North Korea. So Godzilla was this vast, uncontrollable force that they could do nothing about. He was explicitly stated to be a representation of nuclear weapons. And through the 50s, through the 60s, this maintained. As the threat of nuclear disaster eased and faded as the Soviet Union collapsed, you see the Godzilla franchise getting sillier, more playful. But from the beginning, the kaiju have represented civilization-level disasters. And while we are all globally aware of the threat of nuclear warfare in this day and age, Fallout series just came out, it is not the overwhelming threat that people see to civilization. What is the threat that is oppressing the minds of most first world countries, including Japan and the United States? Because you know that it has to be something more universal, because Kaiju number 8 has resonated with so many people. Because that is what Kaiju number 8 is doing. It is following in the gigantic three-toed footsteps of every entry in the genre that came before it by representing that deep psychological fear. Now, only sticking to what is available in the anime so far, you saw that the salamander kaiju that started off the series was called a 4.2, I believe. These kaiju are rated on the scale. They come in, they attack the city, they are a force of nature. They just come out of nowhere, and there are civil servants who are sent to deal with them. Military, defense force, and then the cleanup crews afterwards. This is very, very much like the earthquakes and volcanoes and tsunamis and typhoons, the snowstorms, they represent, in this case, natural disasters that threaten civilization. And as the anime goes on, that will become more clear, but I don't think that I'm adding anything new that hasn't already been explicitly stated. It's shown it's never explicitly stated anywhere in the manga. But in the anime, in the manga, they are shown to be these forces of nature that we can only react to. And so that is representing the 2011 earthquake that shattered Japan, the 9-pointer. The fact that there are schools in Japan, children's schools, where children have to wear hard hats walking to and from home because there are volcanoes erupting nearby enough to throw cinders into the air. The kaiju aspect of Kaiju number 8 represents the existential threat of natural disasters, Haiti, hurricanes, earthquakes, famine, fire, disease. Okay, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But that is not what we are addressing in the episode number 3. Now, this video has taken a long time to get there, but I think the power, the kick that episode number 3 has is that it addresses the other half of the civilization level fears that Kaiju number 8 is as a story is addressing. One is the external factor, the constant battle that civilization has to put up against the elements, against earthquakes, against tsunamis, against fires. The other one is the other threat to modern civilization, which is, and it's referenced in the anime, the declining birth rate, or rather, the lack of human connection that causes that. The loneliness epidemic. If you go across all first world nations, both men and women are experiencing a loneliness epidemic. And this isn't just lack of romantic partners. This is a lack of friendships, a lack of connection caused by the increasing atomization of human beings, primarily due to technology. You can sit in front of your computer all day and never see another human being. You get that dopamine rush, but ultimately this leads to a very lonely, unfulfilling lifestyle. And we know that if you're listening to this, you probably are aware that it's bad in the United States, it's bad in Canada, it's bad in the UK. But of all of the nations that focus and follow these statistics, Japan is one of the worst. Japan and South Korea, they are kind of, what do you call them, pinnacles of modern civilization, of that technological elite, maybe. I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but the loneliest epidemic is very, very intense in these. And what is our hero fighting against? One, he is joining the Defense Force to fight against these natural disasters, but he is also joining the Defense Force to break out of that super isolated loneliness. Him basically rotting alone in his nice apartment. He has a nice apartment, he can buy whatever he wants, but he's completely atomized. He has no friends. He shows up at work, he waves hi, and they all respect him, but he's got no life outside of that. He is a 30-something-year-old lonely adult. And then he decides to go back into the Defense Force, and he's tossed in with all of these children, teenagers. And he's different from all of them. You will notice that all of the other main characters are kind of standing apart. Furuhachi, the red-haired guy, he's having an arm wrestling competition, but the other two, they're separated, isolated. Everybody's admiring Shinomiya, but nobody's interacting with her. And even Reno is only interacting with Kafka until Kafka starts shaking things up. Kafka addresses people fearlessly because, you know what? He is that older guy. Have you ever been in a group of people, like at a national park or at a museum, and everybody's kind of standing in their little maybe family or friend groups, not really interacting, until two middle-aged guys glance across the room and make eye contact, and maybe they're both contractors. I've seen this happen so many times. My dad, he was a contractor, worked with his hands. He sees another guy. Maybe the guy's Mexican, maybe the guy's Chinese, but they've got that, sturdy wrists like iron bands look to him. And he goes up and says, hey, my name's so-and-so, who are you? Middle-aged men, past their 30s, they have a sort of social confidence that allows them to reach out, in my experience, that allows them to reach out across and shake hands. Middle-aged women too, to some degree. But that's not what we're talking about here. Our protagonist is a middle-aged man. He's close to that. He's 32. He's getting up there. He's significantly older than the people around him. And you can see that confidence, that social confidence seeping out. He is not afraid to approach Shinomiya, who everybody else is intimidated by. He's not afraid to talk to these hotshots from their big universities because, he's older than them. He's more mature with them. He's gone around the block or two. He's seen a few things. And so it doesn't matter that they're better than him, they're stronger than him, they're faster than him. He's had enough life experience knocked into him that he knows that it doesn't matter. We're people. And you can see in a very natural, well-written way, in this episode, you can see the beginnings of these friendship forming between, the old man, old at 32. I don't know how I feel about that. And these young whippersnappers. And they kind of, even though they don't necessarily respect him yet, they're deferring to him because of his age, which is a natural process that happens in groups of people that have a mixed age level. And so our hero, what is he defeating in this first chapter? It's definitely in this third episode. What is he defeating? Kafka is not defeating the kaiju in this third episode. Clearly, he's helping, but what he's doing is he's defeating the loneliness. Again, look out for that double-tiered representation of civilizational threats. Natural disasters and the loneliness caused by the atomization of these wealthy first world societies. Our hero is going to face down both of them. In this one, he's not doing too good against the civilization-ending natural disasters, but he is acing that socialization, breaking out of his loneliness, reaching out and making new friends. And lo and behold, not cringe, but done actually well with good storytelling. Friendship was the treasure all along. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Am I being too cheesy here? Did I just ramble for 15 minutes on a Wednesday video? Hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.